Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Daniel Dixon, the Flea, Marshall point guard who led them to the state semifinals in 2006. Had a great career from my old childhood friend Dip Mistress down in Augusta State. Um, Daniel is a pastor at Redeemer Fellowship. I want to make sure I get it right.
Yep. Redeemer
Um,
friendship.
yeah, after having a pro career in Europe as well. Um, Daniel, good to see you again. Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course. So usually I do background on people before I interview them, just to know something about them. Uh, and I end up asking questions like, who'd you learn how to play basketball from? And your life is so incredible. It's almost like it could be a movie. When I was reading some of the things online, all the things you've been through, if it was a movie, I don't think anybody would believe it.
Sure, man. Yeah, as I as I thought about you asking me to jump in on your podcast, I thought this could be either 5-minute interview or it could be a 2-hour conversation. But whatever direction you like to go in, I'm eager to share just, how I got introduced to basketball to my life and journey here in Northern Virginia and how I got to where I am today.
Well, just by way of further background, you had a twin brother named Brad, and you two spent some time homeless and definitely poor as kids. Your mother, who ended up having leukemia, I believe, spent some time in jail, and you lived with your father at times, but sometimes you lived with others, including the parents of teammates, the Whittingtons and the Wise Carvers, the
Mhm.
Marshall teammates who were on the team that went to state. And you earned a scholarship, and otherwise, I don't think you had a lot of plans to go to college, and it all just kind of worked out for you. Um, and then when you were in Europe playing basketball, you felt you were called, almost kind of called back to the United States, and that you joined the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I believe
Yep.
it's where you met your wife, and from that you became a pastor in your church. So it's an incredible story. I thought I first want to start out um, being a pastor these days. And I'm the son of a Baptist minister and a grandson of a Baptist minister,
All right, there you
great
go.
grands, and a nephew of Baptist minister. So I come from that world a little bit. They would argue that I fell far from the tree, but I do
Yeah,
know
you're
a
never
little
too
bit of
far away, man.
I know a little bit about it. In this day of divisive politics, um, is it challenging to be a pastor sometimes when we're so divided as a society we can't even have discussions about things with friends and family sometimes. Does that make your job tough?
To some degree, it does. I think a lot of times with politics or any conversation or topic that can be pretty divisive, for me, it's like, man, I'm just gonna bring you back to the main point that like the way see the scriptures and the way I see Jesus, it's man, he doesn't have any political affiliation.
Hmm.
That Jesus is king and his his kingdom man has a desire to infiltrate our lives and even our world. And we like to put Jesus on either side as a Republican or a Democrat, or left or right. And Jesus is like, man, I have no affiliation with either side. Like Jesus was all about his kingdom and the glory of God. And in fact, he was calling us away from our political affiliations to our giving our allegiance to him and his kingdom. And so, yes, it can be divisive, but man, I just try to keep the main point of man, our identity is to be found in Jesus Christ and his life, death, burial, and his resurrection, and allow the scriptures and his kingdom to shape our life.
Do you ever have people that you counsel and in your flock that have expectations that you would think a certain way and are surprised that you don't take a stand politically? Or do you think most people are relieved that you're more open-minded about accepting both sides?
Of course, man. We all have an agenda, every last one of us, And for me, it's just continuing to point each other, point us, and even my own heart, right? Like I'm susceptible to thinking or trying to make Jesus fit into my ideology or make Jesus fit into what I think is best. And I continue to pastor people and even my own life of going, no, I need to be submissive to Jesus.
Mhm.
Like where would Jesus uh be leading us and guiding us? Like if Jesus was here today, how would he have a conversation with Donald Trump, President Donald Trump? Yeah, man, how would he love him and how would he be pointing Donald Trump to the things of the kingdom of God and former President Biden? Like, yeah, and so it's yes, people are often trying to get us to pick a side.
Mhm.
Um, but the most important thing is, right, loving God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And we're gonna fail at that, but thank God that He's a gracious and forgiving and loving God to keep on helping us pursue what is the most important.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Um, well, when you think of the things that you've been through, a few things that I read about you had said it over and over again. You're lucky you're not dead or in jail or something a few times. One time it was quoted from Mitras.
There you go.
Um, we played little league football together, and we played against each other in high school basketball. So I know
Oh, where'd you go? Where'd you go to high
I went to
school?
Robinson, and so I
He's a
played point
Woodson
guard
guy.
there. He was a year behind Tommy Amaker, and so
Yeah.
Dip was a really, really good player. Believe it or not, he doesn't look like it, but he was. Dip was a
Yeah.
fierce
Yeah.
competitor. I know you know that
I've
side
heard
of him.
stories. Red Jenkins would always tell me about him.
Exactly. Yeah, Red Dip was very. He didn't emerge from Tommy's shadow until his senior year because Tommy was a junior when Dip was a Tommy was a senior when Dip was a junior. So Dip
Right.
didn't play that much. The district basketball was really tough in those days. You couldn't really have two small guards on the court. This is the days before 3 pointers. So Dip had to wait his turn, and then he made the most of it. Um,
Yeah.
but I was going to say about we'll get back to that when you think about your journey, you found your way through the church, at least at some point, but a lot of times you would ask for help. You'd ask a teammate whether I can come live with you for a while. You'd work, you'd mow grass. You had your troubles, and I guess you probably would even admit some of them, it was because of your attitude, but sometimes you didn't have you just found a way yourself. Do you feel that these things are better handled by the church and by the individual? Or do you think looking at the things you've been through, the government could do a better job of helping kids in crisis? Did you have support that people to come help you?
Great question, Julian. In the days that I grew up in the 90s, yeah, our second home, and some people's even, for me, sometimes it was my first home was the rec center. Like Court Kelly Rec Center was, equivalent to me to just my home. And so I'm just constantly in the gym, constantly in the rec center, constantly looking for places for security and safety. And I had a number of friends who, man, we just leaned on each other. Like, one of my one of my closest friends, or two of my closest friends growing up, was Walter Smith and Glenn Andrews. And so, man, these brothers would constantly invite me into their homes, or I would stay the night at their house, or vice versa. And there was a big community, communal sense growing up in the 90s. And so the rec center was huge. We were on food stamps and governmental assistance. And so they played a role. Um, and so obviously we could have used a little bit more help, but as a kid, you don't know a whole lot.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're just kind of navigating life and you're trying to figure things out. And so looking back, sure, I wish that there were a little bit more structural support from government. But I don't know. I'm not quite sure if my parents would accepted any of that to begin with.
Mhm. Yeah. Just for folks who don't know, I believe Walter and Glenn were TC Williams class of 2006, I believe, right?
2007.
2007. Okay. Yeah.
They somehow were a year younger than me academically, but we were
Right.
all the same. We were all born in 88.
Yeah. They were on the team the year before they won the state title, and people will still say they were the better team, but the other team won the state. I think 2008 team. I've done. Um, I talked to those guys before. Well, the fact that you had to fend for yourself in some regard and rely on the largesse of others. Do you think that made you a better player? I was reading about your games when you played against Meadowbrook and these, 6'8", 6'7" guys at the state tournament when you're going one-on-one against Scotty Reynolds, another religious point guard from Northern Virginia, legendary point guard. Do you think that kind of fearlessness that you had to have growing up, did it help you become a better basketball player?
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, going against, a 6'7" person has nothing is different than like being homeless, sleeping on the shelter, sleeping in shelters, sleeping on floors, begging for food. Like, I mean, those are two different two different contexts. And so, I mean, on the court, it's like, man, you put on the basketball shorts the same way I put on the basketball shorts. So there ain't a whole lot of difference between you and I, except for height and skill. But man, what's inside of me is like, man, let's let's go. Like, man, I'm sure I can handle my own. Um, and so, yeah, I think overcoming a significant amount of adversity as a kid definitely carried over into my mentality on the court. I felt like every time I played, whether I was playing one-on-one, playing pickup, playing in an actual game, I felt like I could win, regardless of who you are or who our opponents were. So,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah, and also a lot of times when you think about the fears that we have, it's the fear of failure that really holds a lot of athletes back. That,
Mhm.
that seed of doubt in the back of your mind. When you're worried about a place to live and you're worried about your parents, whether your mother is taking care of herself and worried about your father, what does that do to the fear of failure? I would think you probably don't worry about failure. Basketball is kind of a release, and you're out there and you can kind of just do your thing.
Yeah, I think for me, Julian, it was so much so I wanted to be good enough that it would draw my parents to the games. Like it wasn't so much a fear of failure. It was, could I be so good at basketball that my parents would want to be in the gym cheering me on and supporting me? Like I just that was just my driving motivation. Um, to just, hey man, I just want my dad present in the stands, and can I be so good that he would be delighted to come to one of these basketball games? And can I be so good that my mom would stop doing some of the things she's doing so that she would be present at the game? And so it wasn't so much the fear of failure. It was just, man, uh, I long for my parents' approval and I long for their acceptance and I just long for their love. And so can I excel enough for them to affirm that and give that to me?
Yeah, I was arguing that you wouldn't have that fear of failure because you had other
Yeah.
parts of your life were so great. Were your parents athletic, whether they played or not? Were they athletes?
I think my dad, is yeah, he seemed like he was an athletic guy. He tells me stories of like when he was a kid, he would at least be one of the fastest guy on the field, but he just wasn't disciplined enough to listen to the coaches. And so he was just a hard head.
Yeah.
You know, Julian, I'm not the best player of my brothers. And actually not even the best athlete. So I'm one of four brothers by my dad, four sons on my dad's side, Andre, Anthony, Bradley, my twin, and then me. I was just the one who worked the hardest. So my oldest brother, Andre Dixon, he was by far the best basketball player of the Dixon brothers.
Where did he play?
He didn't.
Oh,
I think, it's his story to tell, but like he just kind of found himself more in the streets than he did in the gym.
hmm,
But I mean, I didn't beat him in a one-on-one basketball game until I was I think until I was 21 years old.
hmm.
So, I mean, as little as he played organized basketball, man, he was a really, really good basketball player. And he's the one, him and my older brother, are the ones who introduced me to the basketball.
Yeah.
Back when we were in Delray, Lynn Haven, or Reed Street down in Alexandria. We had an outdoor basketball court. I was about 5 years old. They were about eight and nine, and they introduced me to basketball.
When people ask you where you're from, do you say Alexandria, or because I see on Facebook they always say AVA. I know that's Alexandria. Do you consider yourself that's your home, or you've lived in? I know you lived in Arlington and also in near Marshall and Falls Church.
I recognize all three places. So I'm saying I'm from Northern Virginia, but I'll break it down, right? Elementary school years, I was in Alexandria. Middle school and the first 2 years of high school, I was in Arlington. And then since 2004, I've been here in the Vienna, Tysons, Falls Church area.
Right. Now, and Daniel, you're biracial. Is that right?
Yep, my dad's black, my mom's white.
Right. Now, how do you what impact has that had on your life? I know we were talking about Cora Kelly. I know it's mostly black kids that play pickup there traditionally, and I didn't. I when I used to see you play, I saw you in those games at the state tournament. I used to be Kevin Weirin's summer league coach right before you got there. I coached AJ and
Yeah.
those guys. I coached Jackson Ishmukes and those guys. I can't think of some of the other kids, Mike Madsen and all that, but how has that affected your journey being biracial? I would have thought you were black and not known until when I saw your hair when you grew out, and that's when I realized that you're biracial.
Oh man, that's a great question. You know, I, I think if you see a picture of me as a kid, you would think, man, he's a little bit more leaning Caucasian. But as I began to hit puberty, like my features changed a little bit to being a little bit more biracial. But the context I grew up in, I always identified as a black man and as a black kid, and always found myself being associated as such. But man, when I entered into the martial circles, it was a different experience for me. I began to realize that like the rough parts of me, and particularly the rough parts of my blackness, wasn't as accepted in that context. And part of that is Coach Ware and I, where we just kind of butted heads. And I don't think it had to do or be racial, but it had a lot to do with my attitude and how I carried myself. And then, man, you kind of get in those different circles in the suburbs and in a more fluent context. And it's like you kind of got to change the way you behave a little bit. And so I've I've had to learn in some ways how to code switch. I've learned how to read the room and learn what's acceptable here and what's appropriate. And as I've matured over the years, it's like, man, no, how do I be who I am and who God's made me to be as a biracial man, and just be the most respectful person in this place.
Mhm.
And so I've had moments of racial profiling throughout the years. And I've also had to kind of figure out like, all right, how do I appreciate the beauties of both cultures and both ethnicities and celebrate the two? But also knowing I lean more towards being an African American.
Yeah. Well, Malcolm X once said, as you know, that 12 o'clock Sunday is the most segregated hour in America. How has being biracial affected your work at your church and your missionary work and your and all your work with in the church?
Oh man, that's as of this moment, I haven't quite had any like negative experience from it. Um, if you come to our if you come to our church on a Sunday, what you'll experience and see is a really diverse context, a really diverse worshiping community, from people legitimate from Africa to people from South America to a young lady from India, another lady from Nepal, and a handful of Caucasians. And so I think from my life experience and life journey, I've been able to just be in different circles and different spaces that has afforded for me to be maybe even attract people who or attract a community of diverse people. Um, and so as of now, since we planted Redeemer Fellowship, we haven't had that quite disruptive or diverse, divisive racial
Mhm.
problem. But man, it might come.
Well, it sounds like to me it might be a strength
It's
that
a
people are
real
looking.
strength. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah. People are. are looking for that. Now, you had a couple of big changes in your life. Um, you stole a yo-yo or two or three, and you got in trouble when you were really young. And then you were at Washington and Lee back then, and you ended up at Marshall.
Yep.
You quit football. You weren't happy with some of the things, and you and Coach Weirin had butted heads. And even at school, like in college, you had some times when basketball wasn't going well, or whether you were going to quit the basketball
Yeah.
team. So how often was it religion and your faith that stepped in and helped you? Was that something that came later on, or was that always there in helping you?
Yeah, Julian, I would say I thought I was a Christian growing up, but I had no idea of what I would say a Christian is today. And so the language of cultural Christianity, or, for me, it's always like, I mean, I was affiliating myself with Christianity. And so, and even in those iterations, as you bring up those stories of stealing a yo-yo, my challenges with coaches throughout the years, yeah, faith really didn't become s- s- a pillar in my life until like post basketball.
Mm.
I as much as I thought I was a Christian, I was still out having sex with women. I was still out getting drunk after basketball games. I was still out smoking marijuana. Like I still lived that lifestyle that did not reflect what a Christian should be living or how a Christian should be living um, until post professional basketball.
Well, then how did you turn it around then? I mean, it's once you go down a darker path, it's hard. Change is hard in life, and it's
Mhm.
hard to like every year I do New Year's resolutions, and I try to I give up
Agree.
everything, and I try to start the year out right. And I might not make it all the way through the year, but it's a good way for me to kind of be a new person, and some things stick. But
Yep,
generally, it's hard to change. How,
correct.
if it was done without religion, or if that wasn't the major driver, what did drive you to change and to get your act together?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier fear of failure, and we all do have that. Um, a lot of it was me not wanting to repeat the actions of my parents.
Hmm.
Like I had no desire to go to prison. I have no desire to not provide for my family. And so regardless of how difficult certain situations became, I had like a resolve. I'm not gonna let it get super dark.
Mhm.
Um, no, that's not to say I hadn't made really bad decisions that could have landed me in prison, and that's not to say I haven't made decisions that I really really learned from. Um, but it's a little bit of just trying to uh, resist poor outcomes.
Yeah.
So. I also community. Like I'm a big advocate for community, regardless of if you're in a faith-based community or any kind of community. Like, man, I was even preaching on this morning, man. We're not created to live life alone. We're not built or wired to be in isolation. And so, for me, I would always encourage you to have a community that's leaning towards the church, but like in anybody in life, man, go find some friends who are going to support you and encourage you and lift you up when things get really difficult and hold you accountable to the things that you are saying yes to.
Yeah. That's an amazing advice.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'll even tell you a story real quick.
yeah, sure.
So you mentioned how I've had different iterations of basketball adversity. And so, you know, Dip recruits me down to Augusta. I tell Dip probably 4 or 5 weeks of me getting on college campus. Like we're working out in August, we're off season, and I'm like, Coach, man, I think I should redshirt. I don't think I'm good enough. And he ignores me. And lo and behold, I have a really poor individuals. And individuals, this was like three or four players with the coaches. And I'm having such a bad individual practice that Coach Dip is like, hey, go home, pack your bags, go back to Northern Virginia. It was that kind of a practice.
Was he serious?
Part of me thinks he was. Um, and so I'm on my way walking out of the gym, and Steve Smith, who was a graduate, '04 graduate from Edison High School, him and we're roommates together and teammates, and he's like, no. Like he bucks back against Coach Dip and he's like, Flea, you're not leaving practice. What you're going to do is get your head out your butt and let's get to work. And so here I thought I was gone within 4 or 5 weeks of getting on campus. But I had the support of Steve Smith pulling me back in and encouraging me and supporting me. And, I had the career I had at Augusta State.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, if your basketball talent, your gift, was one of the things that got you through. Whenever you're brought up on our social media, people just love you, and they not just as a person, but they
Sure.
rave about how good you were. I mean, it's we have a lot of great players that played in the NBA from the area, but the way people talk about you, they talk about you with that kind of aura, which is
Huh.
amazing. You had an effect on people. Do you, when you look back, you did not play football. Um, very long in your career. I
Yeah.
don't think you ever played in high school, but you got the nickname the Flea because of the way you played football.
Yep.
Do you think you could have been a good football player as well?
Believe it or not, I was a better football player than I was a basketball player. So here's the story there. Back when the Raiders, Alexandria Raiders, back then in the 90s, one of my coaches just was like, "Man, you're just a really small and fast, and you're everywhere." Like, man, I'm just gonna give you the nickname Flea. And I didn't. I'm like, all right, cool. That's an endearing thing. I get a nickname, and that just stuck with me all throughout my life. And when I was in Arlington, I played freshman at Washington. It's called Washington Liberty now. But my sophomore year, I actually played
Oh,
varsity.
you played football.
I did.
Okay.
What happened was when we transferred from Washington Liberty to Marshall, I didn't like the Marshall coaches. In fact, I thought they were incompetent. The crossroad too wasn't just the fact that I thought these coaches were incompetent and they annoyed me. We needed some money in my home. And so I just went and got a job during that summertime. And so that's why my twin brother kept on playing football, but I just went and started working so we can have some money. And so that's part of why I stopped playing football.
Wow. Yeah. So, do you ever have any regrets about about stopping football?
I wish I would have played my senior year with my twin brother.
He
Like
was a good player.
he played at Norfolk. Yeah, got a
Oh,
scholarship
is
to
that
play
right?
at Norfolk State.
Wow.
Um, but at the same time, me stepping away from basketball, one allowed me to provide for my family, but two, it allowed me to focus or step away from football. It allowed me to focus more on basketball. Like man, my senior year when we were homeless, I was always at Marshall. Like I would arrive at Marshall around 5:30, 6 o'clock, play basketball, grab breakfast, go to school, skip class at lunchtime, go play some more basketball in the gym, be in the gym after school was over. And so, man, I was just constantly working on my game throughout my senior year, which is partly where I really got the big buzz. Like I was pretty decent growing up, but I was always in people's shadows. And it wasn't until my senior year and the team was just great. That 2006 Marshall team was great. Coach Warren leading us and giving us just great advice throughout the season. But
Did you get to know Bobby Dobson at all at Washington Lee?
I did. I'm a big fan of Bobby Dobson.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of the name Josh McDaniel.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so when I get to Arlington in the early 2000s, I come to Thomas Jefferson Middle School. I move in with my dad. He gets an apartment in Arlington, and obviously I think I'm a really good basketball player. But you had the likes of Joshua McDaniel, Who else? All the Wakefield guards down there. I think KJ. Um, but nevertheless, man, I was just constantly getting, compared to Josh. And Josh was a little bit better than me in middle school. And then we get to high school, and Bobby is in love with Josh, and he just favors Josh, and that's okay. Every coach has their guy. But it wasn't until I transferred away from Washington and Lee that I was able to become my own and
Mhm.
blossom into who I became.
Did you and Bobby ever talk about that later on once you became a really good player? Like,
A little bit, actually I wanted to leave Marshall. I was trying to get out of here. Um, but yeah, and so yeah, I mean Josh McDaniel, him and I are really good friends in middle school and high school. And I wish we could have got an opportunity to see what we could do together.
mhm,
But I think it just worked out
mhm.
uh, for both of us.
Why did you decide, at least for a while, that you wanted to leave Marshall?
Believe it or not, Coach Warren made me try out for JV as a junior.
Mhm,
And I honestly, I was the second best player on varsity my junior year.
mhm,
So I just didn't have a category of why am I trying out for JV when I know I'm about the second best player in this entire school. And so because of that reason, I thought again, this guy is incompetent. This guy is like delusional. Man, I figured out the backstory behind it all later on. And so after that Monday tryout in 2004, I call TC Williams, I call Bobby Dobson, I call Annandale High School. I'm beginning to try to reach out to some of the private schools to see if they can get me out of this situation. Um, and it just didn't work itself out to where I could leave the school.
mhm. No. Well, I should say one of the guys that always kind of had your back was Rob Gardner. Garner there. He's one of the
Yes,
assistant coaches.
you
Tell
know,
us about
Rob.
your relationship with Rob.
Man, kind of going back to a little bit of the race conversation, Julian. Rob Garner is the only African American that's on the coaching staff at the time. There were a few Asians, but Rob Garner he was a baller. He's from the DMV, and what drew Rob and I together was meant for me. It was like I wanted an African American role model. Like I needed an African American role model in my life to help me steer me in the right direction. And Rob in 2000, I think in the beginning of 2005, my mom is about to get a 10-year sentence. She's about to go to prison. This is her third time going to prison in my life. And Rob Garner looks at my mom and goes, "Hey, I'm gonna take care of your son." Now, I didn't quite understand everything that was happening, that was about to unfold. But essentially, Rob Garner just treated me like a son. And so for the next 2 years, he's allowing me to spend the night at his crib. He's taking me to Maryland to play basketball. He's training me. He's walking with me, and he had his own faith. He was encouraging me of what it means to just trust God every step of the way. So in some ways, he was discipling me as a young man, and even discipling me as a Christian. And so, the story about Rob Garner and I is we would play each other every morning, one on one. And for 18 months, I did not score more than 2 points on him.
Wow.
And I knew this at this point, I knew I was actually really good, or was going to have I had a good trajectory. It was one morning, my brother and I got to school really early. Rob Garner and I would work out and we would play one on one, and I finally beat him. And I remember running over to my twin brother Bradley, just bragging at the fact I finally beat Rob Garner.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was a sweet moment for me, and it was just another validating moment too of like, oh, I think I have a future with this basketball thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
you
so Rob and I are texting. We text today. We are not today, but we've texted the last couple of weeks, and mean, I'm a big fan of his, and he's done great things in Maryland. The coaching staff loves him, and they're Coach Warren and Jerry Lynn and I are always like finding ways to support him and encourage him.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier that you would come to school early because you were homeless. You get there at 5:30. Where
Mhm.
were you before then? Where were you sleeping in a car, or where were you sleeping, or in a shelter?
So in high school, when my mom went back to prison, I stayed a couple of months with my stepfather,
Mhm.
and and then some things happened in the home that I wasn't really a fan of, and so moved in with a family from the church that we were going to in His Glory Christian Ministries, and they were living in Arlington in the Crystal City area. And so I was commuting back and forth from Crystal City to Falls Church every day. Um, and so, if I was going to get to the gym before school, and I had to wake up at like 5:30, catch the metro, work out, and then go to school. And then some of my teammates would drop me off, but I was pretty much just, uh, catching the metro, the bus.
Right.
And then when some things happened in that home, I was just asking my teammates if I can spend the night at their house here and there. And then some of them knew the extent of my situation, others didn't. I try to keep a little bit of that information to myself, but and eventually, um, in February of 2006, the Wise Carvers and the Whittingtons let me move into their home.
Are you still friends with the kids and also the parents today?
Yeah, yeah, man. So my kids, Evelyn and Josephine, they know them as Grammy and Pops and
Wow.
Mama, Nana B and G Pops, and so yeah, we've got a great relationship with them. Another family that took me and my brother in 2004 or 2002 was the Cromartie family. So I lived with another family my freshman year in high school.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all, they were all a part of my wedding. I danced with the moms at my wedding. I mean, we all they all know each other as uncle and yeah. So he's
So Daniel, you had almost a dream-like senior season. You had this
yes.
junior season where you're a conflict, you were six man, and obviously you were one of the better guys on the team. But I also know Coach Warren's style. It's a very deliberate style of basketball, and probably something you were used to.
Yep.
When you think about that style, and it was so effective. Could you show all your talent in such a deliberate style?
No, no, man. Um, I wish I was creative. I had the words or even the phrase to talk about it. So like junior year for me was just figuring out who these folks are. Like honestly, I thought everybody was weird and I wanted to fight everybody from the last player to the coaches. Like, no, like this is not me blowing any smoke. Like I was almost in a fight every practice with these folks. Um, and so, I come in and we're running a 5 out zone. I think it was like the Princeton offense.
Mhm.
Pass, cut, screen away, and there was no room for the Del Rey and the Arlington Flea. Like, there was no space for me to play that kind of basketball. And I learned really, really early on that these folks don't even know how to play with this kind of player. And so, in order for us to be as good as we possibly could be, I had to make the adjustment, not them. And so, the summer of 2005, it was the year when, man, we just began to find the chemistry. I mean, we had six seniors that year. Four of us started. Um, the junior caster, he was a baller, and so yeah, it was mostly me learning to die to myself, die to like trying to get all the glory and figure out how can I best become how can I be the best teammate.
Did you ever begin to enjoy the system? And I mean, you guys were definitely on song. You almost beat Booker T. Washington, who won the state final, was a great team. And I
Yeah.
was there that game. I don't remember much about it, but I do remember you guys could have won the game. There was a couple plays in the end,
Yep.
or you would have had it.
Yeah.
Did you learn to enjoy it?
I did. Um, Absolutely, man. No one likes losing.
Mhm.
And so I saw that either I can score 25 points a game and we can be the last team in the district, or I can score 16 a game. We can slow down this offense and we can control the tempo of the game, and we could potentially have a miracle season. And that's what happened. It was interesting because I don't know the expectation of what the team had going into the season, and what we would often do every year. We would sit in the classroom and we would write all of our goals on a whiteboard. And I felt like these guys just had a low vision for what they could do and what we could do. And I remember going, man, my goal personally is to play in the Patriot Center. Like I've gone up there as a freshman, I've gone up there as a sophomore, I've gone up there as a junior. Like I want to play in that arena. And so I'm like, yo, put on the board, we're playing in the Patriot Center.
Yeah.
And I think everybody in the room thought I was crazy. And maybe I was a little crazy.
Yeah. Maybe still are.
Yeah, sure, I'll take. We all need to be a little crazy, don't we?
Yeah.
Um, and the rest is history, Like, yeah, the rest is history. But
It was fun.
that summer in '05, we realized that we were going to be good. We just didn't know how good we were going to be. Um, we I, th- if I think we lost one game that summer, and that was to O'Connell down at American University. That summer camp,
Mhm.
we only lost to them if we did by like a couple of points.
Yeah. So I've been summer league coach for lots of different coaches, and I coach AAU, and I played for some really good coaches as well. And Coach Warren was interesting to me because you heard of Charlie Thompson, the coach that I guess when you were around, he was a great coach too. Coach Thompson and Coach Warren are two guys that when I talked to them, they never blew me away with their basketball knowledge. So I talked to
Mm,
Coach Warren a lot, and I was his first summer league coach there because I had been brought in before he got the job because there was no one to coach, and I had been coaching one of the kids in AAU. So I was actually there. He kept me on, and I got we're friends. He lives down the street out here in Leesburg, and
yeah.
so and so I remember thinking, it's interesting this guy, because I just didn't feel the basketball knowledge with him, right? And so as a summer league coach, after summer I'd step away and they wouldn't see me. I'd come sneak in and watch some games, but I'd always keep my distance.
Mm,
And he would do such a great job with the team. And it's some coaches just have a vision of what they want, and they're
mhm.
able and they have that determination to impose that vision and get the kids to believe in it. And it's a skill. And he might be a basketball genius that just doesn't brag about it and doesn't he's not overbearing with it for all I know.
Sure,
He just
yeah.
didn't share all that with me. But I have never seen a guy with that kind of vision that can put his vision on a team and get results. And Charlie Thompson was the same way. Never blew
Sure.
me away, but
Yeah.
he was an incredible coach. And it was the same thing. He had a vision of what he wanted, and he got the most out of kids. Let's go to your senior year again. You had a great summer league. You lost to only O'Connell, which of course they're great. When you get to regionals, um,
Hmm.
I know you have to beat Mount Vernon, and I read that they were supposed to be really good.
Yeah.
If you lose that
Yeah.
game, your career is over. Do you remember that game, the Mount Vernon game?
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny. I was talking to my wife, and I was telling her I know every loss we had my senior year. We had 10 losses. And so I'm like, so you asked this question, do I remember Mount Vernon? And I go, absolutely. It's a road game. Um, I think they finished first in the national district, so that meant that I think they beat Washington in lead that year. So they're hosting us. We uh we lost in the second round to Madison. It was the first time Madison beat us that year. We only finished the fourth seed in the Liberty District. So we're on the road, and um, EJ Dawson was the player. I think he was the player of the year of the National District, and I think what's the name? He another guard that went down and played at ODU who was really good. And so yeah, man, we're on the road, and it's like for me, my dream was to play in the Patriot Center. It's them, and they're in the way of us of us achieving this dream and this desire. And so yeah, man, as a team we obviously won the game, but individually I just felt like postseason every game I got better.
Mm.
And I I was hanging out with Coach Warren a couple of months ago, and we were talking about it. He's, I was like, man, help me understand like what was different about the postseason. I felt like you let me have a little bit more of a longer leash in the postseason. And his comment was, hey man, at that point of the year, if you weren't going to score 20 points, we weren't going to win.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, I had to let you do a little bit more than what you were normally going to do. And I think he also trusted the fact that I was just an intelligent enough basketball player to go, here's when I need to turn it on, and here's when I need to turn it off.
Mm. Yeah. So, Daniel, what was it like when you finally got to the Final Four, George Mason?
Oh man, as a high school kid, it's like a dream come true.
Mm.
Uh, you're walking into that arena, you kind of entering the arena like a collegiate athlete, and you get to play in front of at that time it's triple A, double A, single A, so it's different. I like, you're playing it in front of everybody, and we play Madison, where we meet Madison for the fourth time of the season. And we never feared Madison. As good as they were, I think they finished the year 25-4 that year. Their only other loss, their loss to Herndon, and then their other three losses was to us.
Wow, that's crazy.
And Warren Edney, Jonathan Ogolo, Brandon Altman, coached by Ku Blank.
Oh yeah.
And so man, yeah, it was a dream come true, but it was also like, I don't think our season's over with.
Yeah.
And
Well, the,
we only beat them by 1 point.
wow.
It was another low scoring game. I think of the score, final score may have been like 37-36.
Well, I was there, but I don't remember the game. So you play Scotty Reynolds in
Yeah.
Herndon in the final. They'd only lost. I think they lost to
O'Connell. I'm sorry,
Math O'Connell. I mean, they
they
lost to
lost to Oak Hill. They lost to
Oak
Oak
Hill.
Hill.
I mean, just the who's
Yeah.
who of local
Yeah.
private school teams and national private school teams. Really, did you know Scotty Reynolds at all?
I knew of him, right? Like, I mean, who didn't know of Scotty Reynolds at that time? And obviously, we knew that he was the newest Northern Virginia, the newest state McDonald's All-American. It'd been a massive gap the last time that we had a guy of that caliber. And I was excited. Like, honestly, I felt like I was the second best guard in Northern Virginia behind him. Like, I'm gonna give my roses and flowers to the right people. And so I just wish, my only wish was he guarded me one on one in one play.
Oh, he didn't
I,
guard you.
no.
Who guarded you?
Julian, so here, so coaches talk, right? And we come to find out years later, this is the story. I don't know how true this is or not, but Hall is the coach's name,
Gary
right?
Hall. Mhm.
Gary Hall.
Mhm.
The story is Gary Hall talks to Brian Mistress, and he goes, the only way you're going to get to beat this team is if you keep the ball out of Daniel's hands. And so what they do is almost like a three-quarter court soft press,
Mhm.
2-2-2-1.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like a really funky press. And I
Yeah.
I don't have the ball in my hand at all for majority of the game. And what we needed to do to win that game was to have Patrick McLean score about 15 points. And but again, Herndon was incredible. Like they beat us. Scotty scored. He did his thing. So it was a
Yeah,
great game.
I always hated playing against 2-2-1 press. It was weird because it was like I felt like there was no like really soft spots in it. It was just kind of like a, it was just kind of there. I never
Yeah,
liked playing against it.
yeah. No, yeah. And so I was, and part of me thought that we would see them in the state finals again, but
Yeah. Okay, did you and Scotty ever talk before or
no,
after the
we
game?
weren't. No, we weren't. Yeah, we didn't cross paths a whole lot,
Right.
Obviously I followed his career when he
Mhm.
was up at Villanova and
Mhm.
rooting for him and championing for him. And even, he had that amazing 4 years and hoping he got drafted. But no, him and I weren't friends. I don't even think we were social media friends.
Yeah, yeah. Because well, it's still amazing that you guys are going to the state tournament, and it's a dream to go to George Mason, but it's almost even greater, of course, to go to the state tournament. And you're playing at Meadowbrook, and I had the program right here, and I look at their 6'7", 6'8". Your tallest guy was 6'3". So on paper, they have to look a little intimidating.
Ye- Yeah, I was talking to Brian Doyle about that game. So
Mhm.
Brian, yeah, I'm helping out with Marshall 1 hour a week. I go and coach over there.
Oh, cool,
And Coach Brian Doyle's there, and I was telling him like,
great guy.
oh man, yeah, big fan of Brian Doyle. I honestly, for me, it's like I've played against these guys all my life. These kinds of guys, these
Right.
calibers of guys. Like I played growing up at Delray, playing AAU, playing YBOA. Like I've got no fear at all. Um, but I think collectively there was a sense of, oh, these folks about to run us out of the gym.
Mm.
Well, every team looks down at the other end and look at warm up, and none of us can dunk. And from from the top player to the last player, they're all dunking. And we shared a bathroom with them, and so we saw them pregame, the way that the locker room was set up. So from the eye test, they clearly passed it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I forgot what was the final score of that game? Did you guys were you able to beat them pretty easily?
we were easily we were in control of the game the whole time.
That's what I remember
From
also.
from tip off, we were dominating that game. And I think towards the end they kind of got some like last minute points, but I think around that 3 minute mark in the fourth quarter we were up. I think we won by 8 maybe.
Yeah. Well, I did a little research on that. So you play Booker T. Washington next, and
Yeah.
I was trying to remember who was on that team because I remember how good they were. So I went and saw how many of them had college careers. Their whole team played in college. James Van played at North Virginia State. Antoine Perry played at Norfolk State. Miles Holly uh, played at Nebraska one year. Brandon Plummer, Norfolk State. I mean, they just had an all college starting lineup. I was at the game, and I remember sitting there. I was sitting behind one of the baskets, and I'm like, "There's no way anyone Marshall's going to be able to beat these guys." And then, by the fourth quarter, I'm like, they have a real shot to beat them. And then your crowd was great. I mean, the crowd was really into that game, and I
Yeah.
really felt like this was going to be you guys are going to shock the world and beat them. What are some of your memories of that game?
Yeah, if we had the film, if my memory serves me correctly, uh, we're in the Siegel Center. Obviously, that's a different arena. I didn't even have categories of playing in the Siegel Center. Uh, but I want to say they got off to between a 5 to 9-0 run, and man, it almost felt like okay, this game is going to get out of hand really quickly. And I remember a play. I catch the ball on the sideline and I make a in and out move at half court and I try to finish it at the rim and I get blocked. But there was a moment where the guy named Jordan Colbert, him and I kind of had gotten into it because of that play. But I felt like that play actually shifted everything. Although I obviously missed the shot, but I think it just changed the dynamics of the game to the point where like I was like, man, I'm not afraid. So if I'm not afraid, y'all not gonna be afraid. So let's just go and play. And as if there was we could all find the film, it just became a really good game. There were a lot of lead changes, a lot of great offense, defense on both sides of the floor. And then the play that I remember most vividly is 5 seconds left in the game. I get um, clipped by a screen to the point where I get the wind knocked out of me.
Mm.
And Coach Raren tries his best to keep me on the floor, but per the rules, I got to get carried off the floor. And so the sad reality is I had to watch my last play from the bench, and that's when, they inbound the ball and they hit a buzzer beater and they won the game by two.
Wow, I don't remember that ending. That's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. So they won the game by two, and they went on to blow out Herndon and Scotty. And but yeah.
Did you ever talk to any of those players on the team after the game? Did you ever cross paths with those guys?
I wasn't super close with my Marshall guys,
No,
except
no,
for
no, no. I'm talking about the Booker T players because they played. Some of them played Division II basketball as well. Did you ever see any of those guys after?
great question. Um, I wasn't familiar with a lot of those names.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
I'm sure we probably played each other. What's funny is I think I remember playing those guys as kids.
yeah,
I remember playing them. They just looked really familiar. I felt like I played against you at a Danville tournament
yeah,
when we were 8 or 9 years old.
yeah,
And I was actually talking to them in the game, but I don't remember ever interacting with them
yeah.
post that game.
I remember thinking after that game, I sat up there. I was with Doug Yule. Back then he was the coach of Westfield by then, and I remember thinking that was an unbelievable Marshall team. I just can't believe what I just saw. I couldn't believe how well you guys played that day. I was blown away. What a great job Coach Weirin had done. What a great team
Yeah.
he had. You guys were unbelievable. You were a great guard. I don't remember a lot about the game, but I do remember that. What did you feel like? We've all had that feeling of your high school career ended. I remember when mine, I lost to Oakton in the first round of districts. I
Ooh.
had my best game of my career, but I remember that walking off the court, my career was over. I remember
Mm.
my son's last soccer game. I wanted to cry because
Yeah.
it got to the state tournament the year before this, and they couldn't get back and they lost. It is a really difficult moment,
Yeah.
last moment of that. What did you feel like when your high school career was over? Because you weren't guaranteed at that point a college
Yeah.
career yet, but yeah.
Yeah. So I only talked to Dip one time. He came and saw me play against South Lakes, and then shortly after that, he went and talked to Joshua McDaniel, and he didn't offer me anything. So obviously, my whole identity was wrapped up in basketball, and here I am. We lost or my high school career is over with. I don't know what my future has in store, and so yeah, I'm sad. We're crying. I remember one of my older brothers coming in and embracing me and trying to console me and help me realize like everything's gonna be okay. But it was painful. It sucks. No, again, no one, to my knowledge, no one enjoys losing. And
Yeah.
so that
How,
that was
how
hard.
important how important is that run that you guys made to your life? The fact that you were able to overcome all those odds. You didn't
Mhm.
win the districts, you didn't win the region, but you had one of those runs that no one will ever forget. I don't remember. I saw the Herndon team play that year. They were phenomenal, but that Marshall team stuck with me all those
Yeah,
years. How important was that run to your life?
Julian, obviously I believe in a sovereign God and he's in control of everything. But I think if we lose first round of districts, I'm not sure I'm playing at Augusta State University.
Mm,
Um, I think that I needed every bit of those. Who do we play? Two, four. We needed every bit of those 8 games for me to put myself out there basketball wise, to prove to the basketball coaches at the college level that I was good enough to play at the next level.
yeah,
I had no money to go Division 3. Like and in fact, I had a cup. We played up in the Philadelphia tournament in that Christmas winter in 2005. And two Division III schools just began to talk to me, and then I think Coach Rand shut all that down because he's like, "Hey man, this kid they can't afford going to Division III. Like he needs a full ride." And the only coaches that really began to show interest was Augusta State with Dip. But actually, during that run in the state tournament, VMI began to show a little bit of interest. Sacred Heart showed some interest. Rob Garner tried to talk with VCU um, about me, and so it changed the landscape of my college opportunities.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
I read somewhere, and you can tell me if it's true or not, that you at one point you told Mitras, "I will get you to a national championship game if you give me a chance." Is that true?
So once I signed, I sent him an email, and who knows how bad the grammar is, and 'cause I was really really illiterate back then. But I emailed him and said, "Hey, thank you for giving me an opportunity to play at Augusta State University. Because you've given me this opportunity, I promise to get you two conference championships and to the Final Four." I didn't know that. I didn't know Division II. The big one is the Elite Eight. I had all my categories based off of Division I, and so I promised him that he would get to the Final Four at least one time during my years at Augusta State.
Yeah.
And lo and
So,
behold, obviously it was not because of me solely.
right.
But my sophomore year in Augusta, we make it to the national championship. My junior year, we lose in the Final Four, and then my senior year, we lose in the Elite Eight.
How do you compare, when you make a run in college, how do those runs compare to your state semifinal run in high school? Is it very similar kind of dynamic and kind of energy?
Uh, I don't think so. I think at Marshall, it was a bit of a surprise.
Mm.
Like it was compared to the Cinderella story,
It was
right?
Hoosiers.
Correct.
Yeah.
At Augusta State, after our freshman year, we went 24-7. Um, with five freshmen and two new incoming players, and I think what six returning people. And AJ Bowman, one of the best Division II basketball players in history of, he was definitely the best player. But so we finished our season in 2006, 2007, 24-7. Entering to that next year, we began to realize, oh no, like we're contenders. Um, which, we that following year we were 27-7. My junior and we lose in the national championship. My junior year, we were 30-5, and we lose in the Final Four. And my senior year, we were 29-5.
And you were number one at one point that year in the
Senior
country.
year, yeah. So we were always ranked post my freshman year. So yeah, so it's different, right? You got different expectations. Like Coach, Dip comes in and he goes, "Our expectation is a national championship." He expects nothing less. Entering to my senior year as a freshman, or entering my senior year at Marshall, it's like we just hope to make it out of districts.
Yeah.
So I think just a different, but obviously winning games, playing really good basketball, having fun,
Mm.
it's all the same.
So what, you're a player that's kind of on the periphery. I mean, your schools aren't knocking your door down yet. You had a career where you started most of the games in your career. You won probably more than 80% of the games, got to a final. You made some all conference teams. What makes players succeed like that when the colleges weren't really looking at them? Why do some kids do so well in college, and why do other kids who might be heavily recruited, they don't go anywhere? What is the difference?
Man, I worked really hard. Like I think that kind of makes a difference. Some guys just naturally gifted, right? We hear the stories of Allen Iverson,
Mhm.
and the guy did not practice. But as soon as he got on that floor, he was he was by far the best player on the floor night in, night out. And I played with those guys. I played with, AJ Bowman, who did not practice, but he was a two-time All-American. I think for guys like me and my caliber, it was like, one, I have no desire to sit on the bench. I don't play basketball to sit on the bench. And so at any hint that I'm gonna sit on the bench long term, I'm trying to find ways to get off the bench. And here's a story. Freshman, I told you I wanted to redshirt my freshman year, didn't think I was good enough. We come up and play GW. Um,
GW, by Division
yep,
One. Yeah.
yep, we play
Cool, cool.
GW. And I have a terrible game. And I'm also, this is reaffirming, dude, all right, my college career is gonna be awful. We go back to Georgia, and when we come back the following weekend, we play UVA. They had Sean Singletary and J.R. Reynolds that year.
Wow. Yeah.
And I turn around and have like I lead our team in scoring with like 14 or 16 points. We go back home to Augusta, and our first game is in Tennessee against Carson Newman.
Mhm.
And I play all of 10 minutes in the first half. And I'm like, this is not the career that I want. And I just worked really hard from that point on. And, a couple of months later, through injuries, I became a starter, and the rest is history. And so I just didn't let things just if I didn't like it, I found a way to change the situation. If I wasn't getting the amount of minutes that I wanted to get, then I needed to put in the work on the off the court um, to get the results that I wanted. So,
Why is Dip been so successful? What makes him such a great coach?
man, that's a great question. I was on the phone with him at the beginning of the season. I saw that they started off 0 and 5.
Wow, he's gonna kill somebody.
And I said, Dip, I gave him a call because about 2 or 3 times a year, I'm calling Coach Dip just to ask him about life advice, leadership, maybe paralleling things from my college experience to what I'm experiencing now. So, Dip and I are really good friends. And yeah, I love that man and his wife, Heather. And I called, I said, hey, man, when's the last time you had a losing season? Because you're on the trajectory for a losing season. And he said 29 years ago, his first year at Belmont Abbey. So that just tells you, I mean, he just figures a way to produce, the results that he wants. And man, there's not one player that I've interacted with that has said, hey, I hate Dip. Now, there's somebody out there. Don't get me like,
Mm.
no one's perfect. But as a player, and you play with him for 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, man, he he's relational. You grow to love him. And so part of this, man, is here's when I believe that Coach Win or Coach Dip was on my side. I signed with Augusta State, and I think he flew up. Dip flew up for 24 hours,
Mhm.
and he lets me know he's coming up. And he goes, I'm coming up so that I can meet your mom. Coach Weir, I love Coach Weir, and there's no shade at him. But Coach Weir got a chance to meet my mom, prior to her going to prison, but he never visited her in prison. But Coach Dip comes up. He flies up from Augusta to Washington, D.C. to meet my mom in prison. And it was in that moment I realized, oh, this guy's different. And he just had he had all my respect. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. Quick Dip story. When we were kids, we played football together. He was a lineman. He was kind of a not a fat kid, but a big kid. He grew early, and he's a short guy, but he was big when he was young. And I remember he was a good. I was like one of the star running backs on the team, and Dip was just a blocker. And then basketball season came, and we're both playing. They called it county back then. I guess they call it travel now. And he was incredible. And I was like, how that lineman get so good in basketball? I just couldn't believe it that I would say we competed against each other, but Dip would kill me. I never beat Dip, I think, in a basketball game. And all the times we played, he was
yeah,
a really underrated basketball player. It's too bad we've forgotten.
I've heard great stories about him.
Daniel, have you ever wanted to be a coach? I haven't seen anything in your background that says you've coached at all. I know you're working with the the Marshall team this year. You ever wanted to be a coach?
I coached like I would say only one and a half seasons.
Mhm.
I helped out with freshmen at Marshall when I came wait when I came back from college, and then I helped out with like AAU with
Mhm.
Nova Cavaliers. Uh I just think in this season of my life with my kids and the church, like I want to be fully present with my family
Yeah,
and coaching. Coaching is hard, man. It takes a lot of time.
yeah.
And anything that I give my life to, I want to give 100% to it. And so in this season of life, because I can't fully commit to it and fully engage in it, uh, I don't, I enjoy supporting, taking my family to the Marshall basketball games and being the biggest fan in the
Mm.
arena. But this season, not right now.
Do you like the way basketball has evolved? Now, everyone shoots outside. You mentioned earlier that with your team, no one dunked. All the kids can dunk now.
Yeah.
They don't look athletic, but they are athletic. They get personal training. And they all shoot. Do you like basketball today compared to when you played?
Yeah, that's yeah. I think you're pushing on an interesting button there. Um, I think I got away from the game for an extended period of time to really appreciate how the game has evolved.
Mhm.
Like when I put the basketball down, I really put it down because it was such an idol in my life, and in a lot of ways, it was my safety. It was my pathway to college and into my future, and I love basketball. I still today love it. But there was such a massive gap between the time I stopped playing until today, and now when I go to practice or when I go to a game, I'm like, dude, did these guys ever learn what a back cut is? Did these guys ever learn like how to come off of a screen? Like it feels as though some of the foundational things that you and I would have learned in little league and middle school, before getting to varsity level, just some simple things, they're no longer being taught.
Mm,
I've watched my fair share of basketball, and maybe next time maybe you recognize this, but like at the high school level, they don't know what a triple threat is.
mm.
Every time they catch the ball, they immediately put the ball above their head, and I was just like, this is just a different game, and so. Yeah, there's some aspects that I think are fun and enjoyable, and there's other aspects that really frustrate me and never want to show up to another basketball game again.
It's interesting. Well, you did have a career in Europe, which sounds like a lot of fun, but sometimes things can sound like fun and they're not really that much fun. Tell us a little bit about your career in Europe.
My career in Europe lasted 30 days.
Mm.
So, in 2012, Coach Lynn, a good friend of mine, he's the head coach of Marshall right now.
Yeah, I coached Jerry.
Did you? All
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
cool. So Jerry and I, he let me stay the night at his house when I was homeless. We just have a really good relationship. So Jerry and I are playing a men's league, and he goes, "Hey, Flea, I think you should just try to play professional basketball. Like, just give yourself a chance." So I'm like, "All right, cool. All right, I would love to." I find an agent. My agent finds a camp in North Carolina, and this camp took the best players from the camp to essentially exhibitions against teams in England and Finland. And I got a chance to be on that tour. And so each night we're just playing in a different professional teams in England and Finland. I had a few coaches reach out to me, but that was the extent of my professional career. I
Mm.
never got a real con I never got a real contract. Uh, and so yeah, I try to correct people and say I didn't quite play professionally. I got a chance to play internationally, but I didn't get paid while I was
Just let them lie about you because so many
there.
times in life people don't give you credit. So when they give you credit you don't deserve, just
I,
run with it.
yeah, I
Uh,
appreciate
yeah,
it, man.
yeah. So Daniel, you meet your wife in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Now,
Yep.
you told me offline that your wife went to American University. Um,
Yes. He's a
And
Woodson grad too. Are
what's
you
that?
Woodson? No, you
Oh,
are
I'm Robinson. She's
Robinson.
Woodson. It's all right.
Okay.
I'm sure she's a fine person. You know, that's one of our rivals. Uh, but she went to American University, a very expensive school.
Mhm.
You had a incredible background. Um, how did you, how were you able to explain all the things that you had been through with her? I bet going to Woodson and American, and I don't want to stereotype, but I bet
Cool.
her life was much different than your life.
Very much, very
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
She didn't. Wouldn't say that she grew up in a rich family. She grew up in a stable family. She's one of four daughters, the Montgomery family. Her dad actually played a linebacker at Davidson and would have been what, the 80s or 70s.
Oh wow.
Woody Montgomery. Yeah, so it's funny because the current volleyball coach at American University, Ahin Kim, I was leading a coach's Bible study at American through FCA, and Shelly had just taken the assistant coaching job at American, her alma mater. And then they were going to church together. He invites her to the coach's Bible study. And then he actually encourages her to just, hey, you should listen to Daniel's story. And back at that time, I didn't mix professional and personal. There were just a lot of beautiful women who came through Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I just didn't want to blur that line. But I had already committed to doing a pastoral residency in Kansas City, so I was like on my way out of FCA.
Yeah.
But I left myself open to professional. And so we grabbed coffee, and I shared my story with her. And she shared a little bit of her story with me. And then, man, I just was like, "Oh, you love Jesus. I love Jesus. I find you attractive. I love to take you out sometime." And 6 weeks later, I moved to Kansas City. But prior to moving, I told her I wanted to pursue her and see if this could end up in us getting married. So,
Well,
yeah,
I wish it'd be nice if it was always that simple. It seems like you guys had a plan and stuck to it. Tell us a little bit about your church now. There's a lot of there's a lot of churches out there, lots of denominations, lots of different
sure.
ways. What makes you guys so special? What makes people drawn to Redeemer?
Great question.
Yeah.
We planted Redeemer Fellowship here in the DC area for the sole reason of people being freed from striving after empty things. Right here in the DMV, man, this is one of the most powerful places in all of the world, and everybody puts their identity in their profession or their careers, or how much they can achieve in life. And what we're trying to do and help people understand is that, man, that's like a hamster on a hamster wheel. Like you're just gonna chase after that. You're not gonna ever be completely satisfied. But I actually know somebody who can truly satisfy you, and it's Jesus Christ. And so we're just hoping to help people realize that, man, they can really be satisfied, really find fulfillment, really find a true identity in the person and work of Jesus Christ. I think what makes us a little bit unique is we're a smaller church. We got about 40 or so families involved, and a part of us, we really take the metaphors in the scriptures, the metaphor family, and we really lean heavily on that. That we say here at Redeemer Fellowship, we want you to be seen, heard, known, and loved, um, and in a real intentional and a real organic way by the people here, but also that you would experience that by God through the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ too. And so,
Do you enjoy the freedom of non-denominational? Like as I told you before, I grew up in the Baptist church, and as I'm sure you know, the Black Baptist Church was the stable part of the community. So that's
absolutely.
where everything was done, and that's people that were deacons and ministers. They were prominent in the
Yep.
community. So there was a lot of structure. I'm not saying it was like the Catholic Church, but there's a lot of we had our own type of structure in the Baptist Church. Do you
Yeah.
enjoy kind of the non-denominational? You guys can kind of create what you want to create, or do you try to create that certain structure as well?
Yeah. So technically we are part of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay.
But the part of the Southern Baptist Convention is you are an independent church. Like, there's no hierarchy telling me, here's how you have to run or
Hmm.
lead Redeemer Fellowship. And so, a lot of ways, the feel of Redeemer Fellowship is non-denominational, but we do have affiliations with the Southern Baptist, and so. But for us, Julian, man, people really appreciate we're shaped by rhythms, right? Whether you think you are or not, like the fact that you pull up your phone at 5 a.m. in the morning or the first thing you do, that's a rhythm. Um, then you go get your coffee or you go and eat some breakfast. Like these are rhythm things. And at Redeemer, man, we just want to be shaped by the rhythms of grace and the mercies of God. And so at our church, we're liturgical to some degree. We follow an order of service just to help us be shaped by the beauty and the goodness of God
Mhm.
in His kingdom.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, man, this has been great. I've been trying to get you on here for a long time,
Sorry
and
for
I'm
making you
really.
wait, man.
What's that?
I'm sorry for making you wait.
No, no, no. This is perfect. I'm so glad. I'm so glad we did this. I want to leave your contact information for folks in the description. If they want to go to your church or get involved. I know you have online presence as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully, folks will be touched by your story as I was. This has been great. Maybe at some point, let's get a coffee and meet in person. I'll be at some of the games, and especially if Marshall goes far, I'll probably see you at a game
Fantastic.
sometime soon as well. But look, man, I just want to thanks again for doing this. And let's next time let's do it in person.
Would love to, man. Again, thank you so much for having me. It's a gift and a joy to have this conversation, and I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Oh man, I appreciate you saying that, and it makes it all worth it when we be able to bring a personality like you to a lot of folks, unless you were following basketball during that time, they might not know who you were, but people who did
No, man, yeah.
always talk about you. So I'm just glad I'm able to bring your story to more people who follow the basketball in the area. So, but anyway, look, Daniel, I've taken a lot of your time on a Sunday. I really appreciate you doing this, and let's get together in person soon.
Will do. Take care, brother.
Okay, buddy. Sounds good. Thanks, man.